Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making the time to join this webinar today. We're going to give everybody about 30 seconds or so before we get started. So please settle in, grab a glass of water, whatever you like, and we'll get started here shortly. All right. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on which coast you're on. Let's get started. Thank you so much for taking the time to join this webinar today. We're going to be talking about the future of staffing and how marketing automation can help you stay ahead. I'm sure by now, all of you are using some sort of automation in your business processes. We're going to concentrate a little bit more on marketing automation today. But before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you again for making the time. We appreciate it. We absolutely love questions. So please ask us as many questions at any point. You can use the Q&A panel in Zoom. Our team would be tracking those questions, and we're going to take the time to answer those questions right as we go along in the webinar, and we might save some of them towards the end. We will also keep time for Q&A towards the end. Also, don't worry about taking any notes or taking any screenshots. This recording and this presentation, it'll all be shared afterwards. So we would appreciate it if you can make this webinar more interactive for us. I'm really excited about the panel that we put together today. So please ask us a lot of questions. Ask us real life questions from what you're facing right now, and answering those and brainstorming on those is really what gets us excited. Here is our agenda for today. We have an all-star panel. We're going to be talking a little bit about what today's market conditions look like. I'm sure that's on top of mind for all of you. We're going to start talking about how you can address some of those challenges, how automation can help, and maybe specifically about some use cases and successes that our customers are seeing with Sense itself. And like I said, we're going to also keep time for Q&A. So with that, let me start introducing you to the panel. First of all, my name is Pankaj. For those of you who don't know me, I am one of the founders of Sense. But I am delighted to have, Cassie with me today. She is Director of Marketing at Core Medical Group, Brindy, Vice President at Insight Global, and Rachel, who's Director of Marketing at ProLink Staffing. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. I'm going to have all of them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about the organizations that they're a part of. So Cassie, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
Hello, I'm Cassie Vio, the Director of Marketing at Core Medical Group. We are one of the largest healthcare staffing firms in the US, and I've been with Core for about 7 years now. I oversee all of our marketing efforts, including our big all-inclusive vacation incentive program for our travelers. It's called Club Core Med, and in just about a month, I'll be taking about 450 people to Cancun for that. So we're looking forward to that.
That is super exciting. Thank you for joining us. Brindy?
Hi, wow, does that sound good, Cassie? I'm Brindy. I'm Brindy Peckett. I've been with Insight Global 17 years now. And actually, the last 3 years have been about consultant engagement, which is really putting the consultant at the center of the problem we're trying to solve and really putting them at the heart of our decision making. So that's the journey I've been on, is just living better lives at work. And if you don't know Insight Global is about just the dignity of work, getting people into where they want to be and allowing people to bring their whole self to work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brindy. Thanks for joining us. And Rachel.
Hi, Rachel Schmitz. I am the Director of Marketing for ProLink Staffing. I have been with the company now for close to 7.5 years, starting in the healthcare operations side, then spending some time focusing on talent experience and diving into data. And then from there, found my home on the marketing team and have the best team in the world. If you don't know about ProLink Staffing, we were founded in 2011 by brothers Tony and Mike Monifo. Our original mission was to deliver the highest quality of staffing solutions in the healthcare industry. But today, we offer a full suite of workforce solutions and technology to serve healthcare organizations and professionals in multiple verticals. And we understand the power of people, and connecting the best workers with the best opportunities is our specialty.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So Rachel, delighted to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. All right. And before we get started, for those of you who are on the call today who don't know about Sense, just a quick overview. We were founded about 7 years ago. And when we started the company, our singular mission was to build a talent engagement platform that was designed specifically for the staffing industry. We've stayed really true to that mission. We today work with over 800 customers, every single one of which is a staffing company. And we also spent a lot of time right up front in making sure that we were integrated with your systems of record, with your applicant tracking systems, and we had a strong middleware. And that proves now in the pudding. We work with 7 of the top 10 staffing companies in the US by revenue, and about a third, or actually more than a third, of the largest staffing companies by revenue in the US. These are all companies with over $100 million in revenue. Sense stands on 3 different pillars: growth, retention, and automation. Growth is all about helping you make more placements, increasing top of the funnel for you, and helping you drive larger revenue. This is really where marketing automation comes into play, and how do you get more people attracted towards your funnel. Retention is all about making more money from the people you already have. So how do you reactivate them? How do you redeploy them? How do you keep them happy? A lot of what Brindy's world is about, and essentially make sure that people stay with you for a long time, do multiple assignments, so your cost per hire keeps going down and it adds to your gross profit. And then lastly, how do you bring this all together in the most efficient way possible? That's automation. How do we take busy work out of a recruiter's life? Anything that can be automated, could we automate them and give them 10, 20, 30, 40, in some cases, even 80% of the time back in their day to actually have live conversations with either candidates or customers to make more placements. So the biggest, I think, reward of this journey has been the use cases that we've seen from our customers and the successes that we see from them. We've got customers that are now, telling us that they've decreased their time to fill by 80 to 81%. We've got customers who are scheduling 25,000 meetings a quarter automatically through Sense, so on and so forth. And you'll hear some of this as we talk more. But without further ado, let's get into the meat of the conversation today, which is, what does the future of staffing look like and how marketing automation can help you stay ahead? So the first thing I want to do is start by sort of acknowledging what the current market realities look like. The current market is probably a dichotomy. It's anything but predictable. If you think about it, we're experiencing different kinds of challenges, but they are probably different for a different vertical. For example, just in January, just in last month, we saw that there were 500,000 new jobs created, and unemployment rate is down to the lowest level in decades. Having said that, you guys are probably all reading news every day about, hey, this company laid off people and that company laid off people, and there are tech layoffs all over the place, and people are rationalizing costs and so on and so forth. So like I said, there's a little bit of a dichotomy going on here. So I was going to throw this one at you, Brindy, because I know Inside Global, obviously does a lot of tech staffing and IT placement. Clearly, there hasn't been a shortage of these headlines, and maybe some of the IT organizations are even starting to pivot as well. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what you're seeing on the front lines?
Absolutely. I think the biggest obstacle and what we're seeing is just fear. I mean, it's this uncertainty in this economic backdrop that I think is so scary. And like what you're saying, Pankaj, is just our expectation has become the worst because we're all 1 degree of separation away from somebody who's dealing with an unexpected layoff. And I think it's that jilted feeling that's so scary of, this happened to my aunt, or I'm seeing this all over LinkedIn. Like, for example, Amazon doubled its workforce in 2 years. I mean, that's unprecedented, that kind of growth. They've gone through the most profitable era on record, for example, during the pandemic. And there's a normalization that's happening right now. There's a correction happening. So you're seeing layoffs there. You're seeing layoffs at a Meta, a Twitter, a Snap. You're seeing it. I think that fear of, oh my gosh. Also, I think that some of these layoffs are happening in a population of people that might not have experienced a layoff before. But with all that said, I'm so optimistic. You started this, Pankaj, of saying like unemployment is like a 3.6%.
Right.
The positive job reports keep coming. It's just the hiring that we're seeing is in government, right? It's in health services, it's in engineering, but it's also in tech, but it's in tech maybe in mid and small business. It's in tech in other areas, or it's companies that maybe during the digital transformation, when all that hiring was happening, maybe they weren't able to contend a bit with some of the market rates. And so you're seeing companies hiring, and you're seeing other companies that maybe aren't technology companies hiring technologists. So I see it as just the future's bright. I see that skill set is still very much in demand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that, because I think that's the conversation I have with a lot of my industry colleagues, right? That, I mean, what we're seeing right now, first of all, it looks like it is only limited to one of the segments so far. And even there, it looks like it's more of a correction rather than the sky is falling.
Agreed.
But, to something that you said that, hey, more of the hiring is happening in healthcare. Cassie, let me pivot over to you. I mean, what are you seeing in the healthcare segment? Obviously, very different story there, right? I mean, nobody's firing people in healthcare, but there's a little bit of normalization happening. So what do you see there?
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting few years in healthcare as we navigated the pandemic and all of the hiring that had to happen there. Now we're seeing that technology is actually really changing the game for us. There's a lot of new technology out there that's allowing the healthcare professionals to find jobs on their own, apply, get their information, and really kind of bypass the staffing industry. So we're trying to figure out, how do we adapt to that new landscape, give people that technology and that autonomy that they're looking for, while still connecting them with their jobs. And with those jobs, we're starting to see that pay rates are normalizing again. Throughout the pandemic, the healthcare pay rates were through the roof. Everybody was trying to get nurses and other healthcare professionals in the door. And now that things are starting to normalize and come back down, we're doing a lot to help set those expectations with our healthcare professionals and make sure that they understand what the market as a whole looks like and what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you said around, using technology and bypassing the staffing company. I mean, I'll comment on that a little bit. I mean, obviously, everybody's going to need a staffing firm. But one of the things we did see during the pandemic was, and I talk about this a lot, the nurses and healthcare professionals, they don't oftentimes work 9 to 5. Their breaks are at weird times. Some people are even getting a break at midnight. They do want to talk to a recruiter, but a recruiter isn't available at that time. So they're actually talking to a chat bot. So, can you have a conversation with a recruiting assistant that is powered by natural language and get to a point where you can get a disposition, where you can talk and, answer 4 or 5 questions. Hey, how much money do you want? What are your credentials? What states do you want to work in? What hours do you want to work? But get to a point where somebody can tell you, yes, we're interested in talking to you. So you can then pick up a time and talk to this recruiter at a time that works for both of you. So I think people are just expecting really quick answers, if you will, really quick disposition. So Rachel, I was going to ask you, I mean, you're obviously in the same industry as well. Anything to add, and anything that you have seen in terms of shifting candidate priorities?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Brendy and Cassie highlighted. Depending on the skill set, layoffs seem inevitable, or the opposite. We're seeing a lot of shortages in hospitals and the healthcare rates are stabilizing. But most of all, candidates, we can tell they're feeling uneasy. They want rapid feedback and answers to their questions right away. So now more than ever, you have a split second to make an impact on a candidate before they go to another company. Ensuring that candidates have a positive experience from start to finish through onboarding to recruitment is especially important. Using automation to ensure there's there's a streamlined workflow, and that we're gathering as much info as we can, like you said, before getting someone on the phone, all to truly show that we care about the candidate's time. That's something that can set you apart from other companies. There are always opportunities to work smarter with tech, and having the right people in place to set up this correctly is really important.
Yeah. I mean, no, thank you for that. I mean, this is another thing that we come across a lot now. If you did even like a just a Google search, you'll find out that there are lots of stats now that when people apply for a job, they apply to 10 to 12 jobs at the same time.
Yep.
So the folks that respond back to them within minutes, if not seconds, are going to be the ones that catch this person's attention. And 60% of the job seekers apply for jobs after hours. So, I mean, you've got to have some sort of an automation in place to make sure that these folks don't drop off. But thank you for that perspective. I'm going to try and summarize this. And I think what we just heard, I think we heard there is certainly fear and concern of layoffs in the tech industry. We heard there are pay rates in healthcare that are normalizing. And then Rachel, candidates seem to want feedback from recruiters right away. So those are good takeaways for, I think, our listeners. But moving on, now that we've set the stage with what you're seeing in the market, how are these realities sort of impacting on how you market to candidates? Are you doing something differently, or will you do something differently this year to address these realities? So Cassie, I'll throw this one first at you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you were saying, really that speed to lead, as we put it, getting back to people as fast as possible is important. And we're really leaning on automation to help us get to those candidates faster. This has been a big pivot for us. We're actually actively growing our automation team in-house this year, so that we'll have multiple people working on that team. We partner with our sales development team, where they used to go out and source candidates through resume searches, through job databases and things like that, and now they're really focused on dealing with those incoming candidates that are coming from the marketing automation. So that's been a pivot that we've seen. We're also seeing, what kind of messaging and automation do we need to hit them with before they get to the recruiter's desk? How can we kind of pre-qualify those leads that are coming in the door, get in front of people and ask the questions that then set the recruiters up to have more of a warm lead and have more of a successful phone call when they do get to actually talk to the healthcare professional on the phone. And then, we're really doing a lot to build up our own technology and incorporate the automation in that as well, with our own mobile app, with messaging through that, and really just continuing to expand on the entire user experience from the moment somebody first fills out a form on our website or on a job board, through that pre-screening process, the recruitment process, and then the onboarding.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely touching on what seems to be the new marketing mantra now, which is you've got to follow people from hello to hire to retire, like literally basically go through their entire sort of career or their entire tenure of when they would be working. Rachel, I was going to throw this back at you. I mean, how are you thinking about marketing automation, given some of the unique challenges in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, we are extremely hyper-focused on talent experience and NPS scores. We can have as many processes in place and find candidates for positions, but if we aren't listening to the feedback from our candidates and implementing change, they're going to stop giving it. So candidates don't want to receive a message for a position they aren't qualified or overqualified to do. Nothing will make a CVR nurse more upset than getting med-surg job blast texts to them. So we ensure that our candidates have the opportunity to update their skills in our system without talking to someone in person. Every step of the way, our technology is backing up what candidates want, thinking of their time, their busy schedules. We recently implemented a website bot to ensure candidates can get messages to someone who's responsive around the clock, because our healthcare candidates work around the clock.
Right.
Being available is really important, and the follow-up with a solution is even more so.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And Brindy, I know your world, you're really focused on the candidate experience. Can you add some advice for us as well?
Yeah, maybe more of the same. You both said that beautifully. I think you want to meet that candidate or that current worker where they are, and that's omni-channel communication. So whether that's an SMS or through an app or on the website or an automated email, I think you have to be thoughtful of the channel they want to engage in, and you have to have a targeted message. And I love what Rachel's saying about NPS. We are also passionate about that, because I think if you are able to understand somebody's experience, and that's real compassion, you put yourself in their shoes, you're walking alongside them. I think that that is the game changer right now. That's the edge, is you're thoughtful of their experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'll make two quick comments. One, came to my mind listening to all of you. I've sort of used this line before that, we're living in an era where we're seeing consumerization of staffing. Candidates now expect a consumer-like behavior from a staffing company. They expect the same responsiveness from you as they expect from Amazon.com. If I told you to text me, don't email me. If I told you to email me, don't text me. If I told you to reach out to me after hours, then do that. And if I told you to reach out during work hours, then do that. Remember my preferences, meet me where I want to be met, whether it is WhatsApp or chat or text messaging or email. Now, how do you do that at the scale that all of you play at? How do you do that for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of candidates? It just becomes a poster child example for, marketing automation, where marketing automation has to sort of come into play. And the second thing I was going to say was, you guys are obviously on the leading edge of using NPS as a tool. We see a lot of companies actually making business critical decisions from that. They'll do an NPS survey with 10,000 people, and obviously, all of you should know that with Sense, these surveys are never static. They're all dynamic. You can literally do a survey that says, send this to a candidate after they've been on an assignment for 30 days. So a few people might be getting it every single day, but you get to see sort of a pattern. So a lot of our customers will look at it and say, hey, 30% of the people are replying with job mismatch or manager concern, or pay is a problem, or in some rare cases, commute is a problem, or hybrid work is an issue. And then those are the big themes that you can then address with your customers. So thanks for sharing that. Again, just to summarize, I mean, it's, obviously, I think everybody is in vigorous agreement here that we should use automation to reach candidates faster. Be intentional about providing a great talent experience. It shouldn't be just a byproduct of what you do. This is where you start with. You design your company, your marketing automation around what will provide you with a great talent experience. And of course, you can't change anything that you can't measure. So, the best way to measure that is this very easy way of figuring out your NPS, your online reviews, so on and so forth. All right. So next thing, I mean, we've talked about automation now a little bit. We've talked about the speed to market, speed to getting to the talent, candidate experience. Can we maybe get a little bit more specific about how you're using Sense to boost your automation efforts and engage with candidates? What are you looking to achieve? How will you measure success? And obviously, obviously I'm from Sense, so I'm passionate about this, but this isn't meant to be a Sense commercial. I think this is meant to be, how can one use automation to get to a specific use case and say, this is super measurable. This is the kind of thing that helped us make a decision. This is, help drive us towards something better than what we were doing before that. So again, Cassie, maybe I'll throw this back at you first and start with you.
Yeah. So when we started with Sense, our strategy was definitely more reactive rather than proactive. So, we kind of dipped our toes in the water saying, okay, we have a need for this type of nurse in this location. Let's put together a campaign and send it out through Sense that way. We were also relying on Sense for a lot of our current employees, our current contractors, to send out the on assignment messages to them from HR and our credentialing and, all of those onboarding things. But really in the last 6 months, we've made a big shift to really revamp that whole process and become a lot more proactive with our automation. So now we're saying, as a new lead comes in, regardless of the source, what do we want that candidate experience to look like? How often do we want to hit them with email? And what do we want in those emails to make it informational and build a relationship with them? When do we want to insert text messages into that process? Again, to start to build that relationship with Core. And then, how can we send them content and questions and surveys to really pre-qualify them so that then when they get to the recruiters' desks, the recruiters have more to follow up on and they're kind of already in the conversation rather than starting from scratch with every lead. They have that warm lead to really start to build with.
That's awesome. I mean, I love these, I love these use cases. Thank you for sharing some of your secret sauce and, specifically what you're doing. Brindy, I know you use Sense to help with candidate support and, candidate experience. And obviously you do that at a scale which is probably unprecedented in the country. So, tell us a little bit more about how you're using some of this.
Yes. So we have something similar that Cassie does is we have a journey map, like an experience roadmap. And so we have certain triggers at certain points of time. And one of the triggers will send an SMS and we'll ask, do you need contact? Do you need support? And we actually get a lot of responses back, yes. And so then there's we have kind of a two-way approach to that where we do have a care center that it can send the message to our care center, which is you can reach our care centers in Atlanta, Georgia. There's one direct number that goes there and they can reach out directly, or it goes back to that recruiter and account manager to be in touch based on the type of request. So that was a big accomplishment of ours in Q4. So this is very new. But what I'm excited about is that's the human touch. It's using automation to identify the people that have a need very quickly and then being responsive to that, but doing so with a phone call back. I mean, that's the discipline and hard work that you have to put into really caring for that group of people. It's now I'm going to really engage with you and solve the problem. And that's really challenging to do.
Yeah, I mean, you just said something which is one of my favorite parts about engagement over the course of running this company for the last 6-7 years, right? I mean, there are people who ask us this question all the time, is automation replacing human beings? And, I've always told them, no, it's actually helping you focus on the problem. It's actually sifting through the noise and finding the needle in the haystack and saying, of the 700 people you just heard from, here are the 2 who need a phone call in the next 15 minutes, next 5 minutes, pick up the phone and call them. You may have gotten to them, but it would have taken you 2 weeks. And now, we can literally tell you, here is your biggest problem, here is level 2, and then here is everything else from where you can just generate a pattern.
Oh, absolutely. Because so much can be solved by, okay, you need this information, or there's a credentialing issue or a login issue. I mean, so much of that is very quick fix, but the stuff that we really want to get to is, okay, so this isn't aligned with your career ambitions and goals. Let me advocate for you. I mean, that's the difference making. I'm on your side. Let me help build your confidence. And back to the start of this, of the market pressures and things happening, we have to keep that front of mind of be compassionate about what people might be going through, what they're fearful of. And we can make all the difference in the industry that we're in.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we see this a lot where companies come to us and say, my recruiters are spending 10 to 20% of their time answering just completely mundane questions. What are your benefits? What is your PTO policy? What's your bereavement policy? And, obviously recruiters have to answer that to get the candidate engaged. But, the support center you have is a great way of answering that. A chatbot is a great way of answering that, because you can literally be like, let's take the 50 most commonly asked questions and, put them in a natural language bot so people can interact with that before they're routed to a recruiter. So, I couldn't agree more. All right, Rachel, lastly, on to you. I mean, I know experience is at the top of your list. So, things to add here.
Yeah, I loved what Brindy and Cassie said. We use Sense in so many ways, but at the top of my list, I'm thinking we use automation for strategically timed surveys throughout the assignment, time-sensitive information, outbound bots that are optimizing interview times. That's a number one in my mind right now. And then with our surveys, we focus on getting quality feedback that we can use to implement new processes or identify areas where our internal team may need more training. So when we have people in place to audit that feedback that's coming from automation and ensuring qualified candidates don't get forgotten about in the busyness of the day, then we can put focus back on reaching back out to leads right away. If a candidate was sourced into our system from a job board and completes a pre-screen bot, that's the warmest conversation you can ask for. They know who we are now, they're interested in working with us, and typically provide information that can move them along in the process at a quicker rate. One thing I did want to mention is Sense also has the capability to send messages on behalf of recruiters, but we've personally gotten some feedback that it feels unauthentic or can put recruiters in an awkward situation. I see the beauty of the concept and it certainly creates an open door for communication, but I'm curious if the panel has any experience in combating this or if there's like a use case that it's worked really well for them.
We definitely had the same challenge of, hey, you just sent this as me for me. And I actually just had a conversation with this person, and that added to a very disingenuous exchange. And now I don't know how to like go back, like put the genie back in the bottle. So we really had that. And we actually, it was a really simple fix. It was, we just kind of changed the send from like nomenclature. It's coming from like, on behalf of this person. So it's becoming from XYZ on behalf of this person. And that really changes the tone, because then clearly you can see this is an automated message, but also it's helpful because they don't fall through the cracks. People appreciate those messages when they're targeted. So I think that right size things for us.
I love that. The transparency is everything.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, I've always advocated that. Everybody today is smart enough to understand a message that is written by a human being versus not, despite the whole chat GPT noise out there in the world. So I think it's just very authentic to say, hey, we're trying to stay in touch with you. You know, some of these messages are going to be automatic, but we just want to make sure your questions are answered immediately. And so some of these things are going to just come out as a part of a journey, as part of a regular cadence, if you will. Okay, I'm going to summarize some of your thoughts on this, but then we got a question from the audience and we're going to go back to that, which was linked to our previous segment. All right, so I think some of the things we heard is proactively provide candidates with the experience that you want them to have, use surveys to measure the candidate experience, and pre-screen candidates with a chatbot to create warm conversations for recruiters. On this particular one, I'll maybe spend another minute. We're now seeing, this obviously differs from segment to segment. So I'll go through like the 3 segments really quickly. I mean, on the commercial light industrial segment, we're starting to see companies that are hiring hundreds of people every week through the chatbot. And I mean hiring, not pre-screening. They're literally going through, what's your name? Are you authorized to work in the US? Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Do you have a driver's license? Can you lift 50 pounds a day? Can you stand on your feet for 8 hours a day? Will you work for exactly this amount of money, whatever it is, $21.32? Yes, 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 yes. Great, you're hired. You have the job. Before you start, we're going to spend 5 minutes with you to look at your IDs, do some sort of identification or background check, and you're ready to go. Then you get to conversations like healthcare, where people are doing a lot of pre-screening. Where are you credentialed? What shifts do you want? How much money do you want? Will you travel? What kind of accommodations and lodging do you want? So on and so forth. So they can literally get to a point where they can match people to the right kind of opportunity. So using the chatbot, you can actually do machine language based job matching. So you can actually match people and say, based on your questions, here are 5 jobs I have. You tell me which one you like, and we'll submit you there. And then as you get to the IT staffing world, a lot of maybe Brindy's world, when you get to IT staffing, when you're hiring more higher level engineers, you're essentially using this as a predisposition to get them to a recruiter. How many years of experience do you have? Zip code? Do you want to work in the office or hybrid? What kind of assignment do you want? Blah, 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 blah. Just get all this normal stuff, if you will, out of the way that your recruiters are going to have to ask anyway, and get to a point where you're like, okay, you're the kind of candidate we're interested in. We're going to need to have a deeper conversation. Pick a time when a recruiter can connect with you. And this is what we were showing on the previous slide. You can literally book your own time slot, which means you are 10x more probable to show up to this meeting because you picked something that worked for you and not something that worked for the recruiter. And there's lots of research out there that shows you that to schedule any single meeting, it takes 6.7 emails. You're essentially reducing all of that back and forth because you're literally picking up a time that works for you. Okay, with that, I'm going to go back to a question that came from our previous segment. And I'll obviously want all of your thoughts on it, but I'll give some of my perspective on it because this is a provocative question. The question starts by saying best of staffing awards are a scam. 90% of applicants receive that award. It's basically a sign-up award now, and the dates point, and the date points are not granular, bought to effect change. What NPS serving resources do you use to measure satisfaction? So the one thing I would say is, I mean, I'm certainly not going to comment on the best of staffing awards. It's obviously run by a company that I have a lot of respect for. But the one thing I would say that I have been saying for the last 7 years since we started Sense is the way you do best of staffing awards today, it's a point in time data. You take 1,000 people and you basically provide them to an organization. They do a survey, they come back to you and say your NPS score is 50. Okay. 6 months later, you do that survey again, and the organization and they come back to you and say your NPS score is 40. Doesn't necessarily mean that your company is doing something wrong. Doesn't necessarily mean that your policies have become worse. You were talking to a completely different set of people here, and now you're talking to a completely different set of people, because all of these 1,000 people, or most of them, would have left by the time 6 months have transpired, and you're essentially talking to a whole new population. So one of the things I've loved about the way Sense does NPS is it is completely dynamic. You could have 5 people start today, and 10 people next Monday, and 12 people the Monday after that, and 17 people the Monday after that. And each one of them is getting their NPS 30 days, 15 days, 17 days, whatever your company strategy is after they join. So you're getting every single individual at the same point in time after they've gone through the same onboarding experience, the same contracting experience, and asking them, hey, what do you think about the company and the service that we provide, which I think gets you much closer to reality. So I think that's one huge thing. The second big thing is, if you've ever used Sense, you can slice and dice this any way you like. You can literally say, I'm going to do a different conversation with people who work at Google versus people who work at Caterpillar. They probably have, different requirements. They probably have different needs, so on and so forth. But I'll throw this out to all of you. I know it's a little provocative, but tell us your views on it.
I agree about the real-time need. And I also agree that you need to look at it from the right lens. You need to look at it from, okay, here's an NPS score of those that are a month in the job. And then I need to look at what's that account and where's that location and who's the team. Because we look at it from many different angles. And I think that's where we can come out with, okay, now we can get to the root cause. And I think where the magic happens is, are we converting that detractor into promoter? Like, did we actually fix the situation?
Yeah, I think,
absolutely.
We find that even if folks don't rate us using the actual NPS, number scale that we send out, we get a lot of text messages back where, we might say, what was your experience with Core? Rate us on the scale. And then they respond with more personal information, or they tell us exactly what they liked or didn't like. And so even though the score itself may not be coming through, just asking the question is still giving us a lot of insight into each person's experience.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's very smart.
We chose a point in time to send the NPS question out at the same time, like you mentioned, of every assignment to every single person on assignment. The cool thing was to look back at the NPS over a year. So all of 2022, we put that as the parameters, and then to see how that can change based on where the talent is, like which assignment they're on, because that can affect things too. If we didn't have as many compliance team members that maybe we needed, onboarding wasn't great, but then we could see that people's experience with it got better throughout the year. So it was a really cool way to gauge how the experience can ebb and flow based on where the talent is. And I love that Sense's tool on the dashboard. You can just see it right there if you have the NPS question in any survey.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say one thing about the Best of Staffing Awards. A lot of our customers use them, and it coexists very well with our platform, simply because they obviously, have a brand, have a certain name recall with customers, and customers obviously like to hear, okay, 7 years in a row, you've gotten client
Yeah.
satisfaction or candidate satisfaction, and that does wonders for people. But at the same time, maybe you can get your actionable intelligence from using some of these dynamic sense workflows. So we also got to, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
I was just going to say, I agree with you. I think anytime you're looking for feedback, it shows that you care. So whether you're doing it from multiple different platforms, it's not going to hurt. It's going to just show people that you care about the feedback.
I think one benefit to doing it with a firm like Clearly Rated is you have an outside watchdog. I mean, it's less in your control. I mean, definitely, and this is a benefit to using Sense. It is dynamic. You can change the questions, you can change the timeline. There's a way you can manipulate that to your needs, and that is great. But then also it's nice to have a benchmarking that is not in your control, because I do think some of that is necessary.
I absolutely agree.
Yep.
Okay, so we did get a follow-up. Can you share how you're promoting your NPS scores with client and candidates? So I'll take this first and I'll throw this back at you guys as well. The first thing I would say is this is a very pertinent question, because again, we've gotten a lot of customers who've gotten back to us specifically to talk about this. So first of all, a lot of our customers are now using the NPS data from Sense in their RFP responses. When they're actually talking to a brand new company, to make them a client, maybe they're talking to an MSP to be added as a vendor, they literally will take data from Sense and say, hey, look at what our NPS is, look at what our candidates say about us. When it comes to taking care of people, we're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk. We've invested in this platform. This isn't something we can manipulate. Here you go. We can even give you access to this portal if you like. And we know that in the world today, a lot of companies are expecting contractors to have the same kind of benefits and employee experience as some of their FTEs do, because the workforce is just becoming so liquid. Most of the large companies, I mean, you'd probably be surprised to hear that companies like Microsoft have more contractors than they have full-time employees. So, there are more temporary people checking in code into their code base than actual full-time employees. And if they were dissatisfied, look what it'll do to their product. So that's when it comes to clients. And then when it comes to candidates, there's an even stronger use case. I wish I could name names, but I have dozens of companies at the tip of my tongue where people have gone and changed their or improved their NPS rates from low 20s to like high 70s over the course of a year or whatever. And now they use that on their website. They use that in their marketing material. They use that in their collateral. They're basically telling candidates, we take care of you. And candidates are very fickle. They'll literally go to the company where they have a better Glassdoor review, where people are saying these folks take care of you, because they don't have loyalty towards staffing companies. This is the kind of thing that makes loyalty. Hey, your NPS is 75. Why don't I work through you guys? You probably have better benefits and so on and so forth. So anyway, this actually helps with both attracting customers as well as attracting candidates. But, please, I'll let you guys add if you have more thoughts on this.
One thing I just wanted to add is educating your internal teams on what NPS scores mean and how they're calculated is really important. When you're in school and you get a 60%, that's not so great. But NPS score of 60% is really great and something to be celebrated. So that was number one step for us. And then, like you mentioned, using it as a case study, showing our talent and clients that their feedback is important to us, and sharing that in a multitude of ways is how we use it.
I think also what's powerful about that is that NPS industry agnostic. So most people you speak to are like familiar with that as a score. It's a brand score. It's about enriching lives. So that's what I've noticed is helpful. It's kind of a universal tool that no matter if you're an automotive or whatever, you know what that is. And I totally agree with you, Rachel. I think you have to socialize NPS, because it's actually not shameful. When you do get a bad score, it's actually that person investing in you to say you have one more shot, which I think is which is a thrill. So we're trying to destigmatize that a negative NPS score shouldn't be shameful. You shouldn't hide from that. You should think you should know that's a big gift, right? You just invest back in that relationship, and your ability to then change that experience is a great one. So that's why it is so important. It's real time. And like you were saying, Pankaj, it's like, just because this one NPS 1 year doesn't mean you can't totally overhaul that experience shortly thereafter that.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to our last big topic, which I think is at the heart of marketing automation. So particularly when it comes to tough economies, and we might be seeing a glimmer of that right now, we hear a lot from marketing teams on how they can maximize the value of their existing database. How do they create a compelling reactivation campaign? How do they essentially re-engage with their talent pool, so on and so forth. And again, we all know that you've spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars over the course of years to pay job boards to make a bunch of these people enter into your databases. But now, how effectively are you mining those databases? Cassie and Rachel, I know you guys live in this world. This is something you're tackling. So can you talk more about that, Rachel? We can start with you.
Yes, I love this one.
Go ahead.
Reactivation campaigns are huge for us. Formers are extremely important. They know our processes, we know their level of experience, and they were once part of our family. So we're consistently using Sense to re-engage formers. As I mentioned earlier, we give them the opportunity to update our database with their most recent skill set or add any new contact information via the bot. They have the chance to update their most recent experience and say what their current motivators are before reconnecting with our recruitment team. This helps our team to quickly identify qualified candidates that we already know will be a good fit for our clients. We have journeys set up specially for just formers that invite them to come back to our site to chat with our live agent team. We share hot jobs weekly, every other day, and then also send messages to them that just tell them that we miss having them on the team.
That's awesome. I love that. I'll share an example from another company that we work very closely with. They, just like you, have an entire strategy around basically nurturing people that once worked with them, right? So they also would actually send them a quarterly State of the Union message and say, this is what's happening with our company.
Mhm.
They actually will invite them to happy hours sometimes in local offices because they're kind of like, you are an alumni. And the other thing that they try and do is they are heavily marketing to these people about and asking them for referrals. They're basically trying to say, hey, if you've worked with us once, we want you to have a source of making money through our company forever. Like,
Mhm.
we trust your judgment now, you go refer people to us, so on and so forth. Anyway, I can talk about reactivation all day long, but Cassie, I'll throw it back at you.
Yeah, so this is actually our big push for Q1 and for the start of the year this year, really trying to get in front of those folks. The healthcare providers that we work with typically work 13-week assignments, and they may work 13 weeks with us and then jump 13 weeks to a different agency. And how do we get in front of those folks during that other assignment to bring them back to core? How do we keep track of when their next assignment might be up so that we're hitting them with messaging at the right timing, and really relying on the information in our database that we have about these people and what they've told us their plans are, so that we can make sure that we're messaging them in the best way to really get back in front of them. And for us, our trip that I mentioned at the beginning is obviously a big incentive to get people to come back to working with us. So the more that we can do to talk about the trip, highlight the trip, and remind them that the free vacation is waiting for them at the end of the year, that always helps too.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll add is I think a lot of people underestimate sometimes the value of reactivation. I'll just like throw an example out at people. It's very common for us to come across a staffing company that has 1 million resumes. It's obviously even more common to come across staffing companies that have 100,000 resumes. Now, pick a company that has 100,000 resumes, and you're going to find out that 90% of those people haven't been talked to in 6 months. So these people, as far as you're concerned, are completely passive. They're almost dead. I mean, in fact, we somewhat morbidly use this term called Wake the Dead, which is a Wake the Dead campaign that you actually run to say, all of these people you paid money for to be part of your database. You probably spend time collecting information on them. How much money do they want? Where do they live? What kind of job do they want? Some of them are probably silver medalists that at some point were almost about to get a job, but didn't. They just were runners up in a situation. These are folks that you can certainly very easily, using marketing automation, reactivate and keep them warm. But then the thing that makes it even better or worse, however you look at this, some of the largest companies will come back to us and do this analysis and say, hey, 50% of the placements we made this year came from people who were already sitting in our database.
Yeah.
Yet their job board spend did not go down by a single dollar. So they could have made half those placements from the folks they already have, and technically not have spent millions of dollars with job boards or what have you. So I mean, it's a slow burn. It's the kind of thing that people sort of understand really quickly, but then it takes them a minute or two to actually put this in motion. But anyway, the thing about reactivation is reconnect with people who were once on assignment, reconnect with people who were silver medalists, make sure you're preparing them for the next opportunity, make sure you're offering them a way to refer candidates to you, and make sure you're offering them an easy way to get back into your organization. All right, so let's start wrapping things up. I mean, we're getting towards the end of the hour here. So I want to make sure we can save some time for any questions. But before that, it's obviously a pleasure having all of you on here. And I want to make sure we tap into your brains and get some pieces of advice out of it. Would all of you mind giving us like top 1 or 2 pieces of advice when it comes to to other marketing and staffing leaders on how they should get started with automation, or if they've already started with automation, how do they take it to the next level, so on and so forth. So I would, also love to get this education myself. So Brindy, I'll throw this at you and start with you.
Sure. Maybe I'll tackle that, how you might get started, because it is very daunting. What I thought was very helpful was doing just this effort to really understand an experience from the outside looking in, which wasn't something I did before that. And it was eye-opening to see how automating, streamlining, targeting communication as you're in the user seat, what a big difference when you're thinking that way of like, oh, I'm experiencing this. Wow. So I would say you do that and you kind of plot the course of what it's like. And then you're going to say, here's where I want us to go. And then think about automation from that vantage point. That really helped me get started.
Awesome. Wonderful. Rachel, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I could not agree more, Brindy. But my number one piece of advice is if someone takes the time to give your feedback, address it, good or bad, in a timely manner. And you might not have the answer right away, but respond and send them a link to set up a call with you on your calendar via text for the next day. If you don't address feedback or communicate effectively, candidates will become a detractor and your NPS score is going to suffer. Secondly, we mentioned this earlier, always be authentic and transparent about your intent with automation. Candidates working in the staffing industry can experience change or layoff in the blink of an eye. So if you have sensitive information that should be shared over email, utilizing Sense can get information that should be to them all at the same time, and then route responses to the candidate owner. So using that on the back end is really helpful. Automation can be game changing as long as we strategically couple it with the candidate's experience being at the forefront, because both are key for building up true pipelines and lasting relationships with candidates.
So can I underscore that? That is such a big deal because we've made so many mistakes along the way of hearing information and trying to mobilize a recruiting team to call everybody.
Yes.
And it's with the best of intentions, because again, that's let me deliver it to you because I care. But then someone hears something first and there is that unfortunate, like the telephone game of information spreading, and somebody feels really upset and it just causes a major morale issue, which we don't want that to happen. So just thank you for saying that, because I think that's really important, that we need to communicate fast and we need to communicate with everybody that's impacted and then be really clear in next steps.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Thank you both. Cassie, last but not the least.
Yeah, as far as, getting started with automation, I think starting with the people that are currently working for you, your candidates that are on assignment, is a really great way to sort of dip your toe in and automate a lot of the work that you might be doing manually right now, whether it's like a day one check-in when they first start an assignment, or a follow-up on, their benefits after a certain number of days, or things like that people in the building are probably doing for you now. How can you automate that to free up some time on their desk to do, more of that personal connection that they need time to do? We've also found that transparency with the sales team is really key. I know we touched on that earlier, but we work really closely with our recruiters so that they understand exactly what we're sending. When we have new campaigns and new journeys that we're pushing out, we make sure we send it to the sales team first and we say, this is what's going to be hitting people. They're going to get it on this day. Here's what the message looks like. It's going to look like it's coming from you so that you can understand, what to expect when people respond to it. And really just helping the recruiters have that script to respond back to people that are getting the automations has been a big help for us.
That is so important, Cassie. I agree. Giving them everything that they need to share with the candidates so that they know what to expect up front is really, it can affect their experience for sure. So I think that's great that you take the time to do that with your teams.
Yeah, and Cassie, I've got 2 questions in the Q&A panel, and I kind of feel like you were answering both of them somewhat, so I might throw them at you, but give me 5 seconds to just wrap this part of the section up, just to make sure people can at least glance over some of the takeaways. Obviously, the first thing is to make sure that, you actually have a culture that is candidate centric. In the staffing industry that I grew up in, we used to talk a lot about war on talent. And I, keep telling people, hey, the war on talent is over, talent won. That's the, that is your differentiator. When I grew up in the staffing industry, we used to know companies by which client do you have access to. That's actually what a lot of people used to talk about. Can you actually, we can support people at Microsoft and you can only support people at Google. That seems to be more of a commodity now. It seems to be more of a commodity now in terms of getting access to a client. But how do you engage with the talent and how do you keep better talent, to sort of stay with you longer seems to be the differentiator. The second is creating a culture where everybody feels like a true contributor. Just the idea that you can actually, there is no role that is too small. Everybody plays a part in your organization. And then lastly, celebrate every success that your organization has. Just create a culture where you are creating a team of people. Again, I've heard growing up a lot that, staffing companies treat me like a number. I'm just gross margin to them. That's not the world we live in anymore. So, that's one of the other things that I would say. But anyway, I'll throw these. I know we are almost at time with these quick questions at you. And I know, Cassie, you were almost answering these questions. But one of the questions we got it, when it comes to technology, have you had trouble getting recruiters to adopt new processes? And if so, how have you combated that? So whoever wants to go.
Yeah, so I mean, like I mentioned before, for us, communication has really been key. Transparency is one of our core values here, and I think we've really taken it to the next level when it comes to our Sense campaigns and using automation, especially because so much of the automation looks like it's coming from the recruiters. We have those conversations with them to explain what we're sending, when we're sending, why we're sending, and really empowering the recruiters to have that script to follow up appropriately.
Awesome. And the other thing I got was, what would you suggest to be the best place to start with automation if your data isn't in great shape?
One thing that we've found is using bulk cleanup feature in Sense, where we can send out surveys and questions to folks, asking them to clean up the data for us. And that's been extremely helpful so that we can ask them for their job title and their specialty and their new address and their phone number and all of that good stuff, and kind of just get the data cleaned up without us having to actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that. I was actually going to say exactly the same thing, which is,
yeah, so was I.
You don't need perfect data to start automation. Automation helps you get to perfect data. So, just something to keep in mind. We've got customers that have gotten wrong data, people that don't have recruiters associated, wrong end dates, but you could change all of that within a second. But anyway, thank you so much for tackling the questions. Thank you so much for sharing this wisdom. Brindy just dropped off. She sent me a text saying her computer is dying, so she might just have been thrown out. But all of the participants here, they were really kind to give us their time. This is their contact information. If you wanted to connect with any one of them, you can certainly reach out to me. You can certainly reach out to anybody at Sense. If you're more curious about how some of our customers are using automation, how it might make sense within your parlance, we'd be more than happy to talk about that. But thank you again for taking the time. We'll make sure we circulate the recording of the call today as well as this presentation. With that, Brindy, who's not here, Rachel, Cassie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so